You think you know your own blood until she leaves you on a frozen highway with nothing but the sound of the wind and your heartbeat. That's how it started. My daughter, Amelia, my only child, dropped me off on the side of Route 41, somewhere outside Traverse City, Michigan. It was New Year's Eve, the kind of night where the snow doesn't fall. It sinks heavy and soundless, like ash from a world already burned down. She took my phone, my wallet, even my coat, and drove away. Said it was for my own good. Said I was too controlling. I watched her taillights fade into the white and thought, so this is how it ends. But it didn't. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. See, Amelia thought she was cutting off an old man, a burden. She didn't realize she'd just awakened someone who'd spent 64 years building companies, surviving recessions, and burying a woman he loved more than life itself. She thought she knew me. Hell, I thought she did too. But that night, as the wind slicing my shirt and my hand started to go numb, I understood something. She'd taken my money, my name, my trust, but not my power. I walked that night. Miles. Each step a promise. Each breath a vow. Somewhere between the gas station lights and hum of the highway, I whispered to myself, "You'll regret that drive, Amelia. You just wrote your own ending." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the night I lost everything. It was the night I started taking it back. By the time I reached the edge of town, my legs were shaking and the cold had gnawed its way deep into my bones. But I wasn't dead, not yet. There was an old diner still open, lights flickering like tired eyes. Evelyn's, the sign said, my late wife's name. Funny how life throws you breadcrumbs when you're lost. Inside, the place smelled like burnt coffee and fried hope. A waitress with red hair and a cigarette voice looked me up and down. "Sir, you okay?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will be." She poured me coffee without asking. I wrapped my hands around the mug like it was a lifeline. The heat stung, reminded me I could still feel. In that booth, surrounded by strangers and old jukebox tunes, I started piecing it together. The papers I'd signed, the trust I'd let Amelia manage, the investment advice from her husband Noah, that smug bastard with his empty grin and expensive shoes. They'd been planning this for months, maybe years, using my grief like a weapon. And sitting there, I realized something else. They didn't just want my money. They wanted control. My legacy. To erase me before I was even gone. So I made a decision. No more begging. No more fatherly patience. I would play the fool a little longer. Long enough for them to believe they'd won. Then I'd turn every lie, every signature, every stolen dollar into the rope they'd hang themselves with. As I left that diner, snow crunching under my boots, I glanced up at the neon sign one last time. Evelyn's. And I whispered, "You always did show me the way, love." The wind carried it off, and that's when the plan began to form. 2 days later, I walked into Liam Carter's office, an old friend and the only lawyer I've ever trusted. The place hadn't changed in 20 years. Wood paneling, shelves packed with dusty law books, and the faint smell of cigar smoke that somehow refused to die. He looked up from his desk, eyes wide. "Jesus, Mason, you look like hell." "I've been to worse places," I said, taking a seat. "This time, I'm not coming to make peace. I'm here to make war." Liam didn't ask for details. He knew that tone. I laid it all out. The forged documents, the frozen accounts, the betrayal. When I finished, he just leaned back, fingers steepled, studying me like a man who'd just seen a ghost. "You want to fight your own daughter?" he asked. I shook my head. "I want to save what's left of her soul by showing her what she destroyed." That's when we drew it up line by line, revoked the power of attorney, freeze the joint accounts, build a new, ironclad trust, the Evelyn Sterling Foundation, every penny redirected to something pure, untouchable, a home for women rebuilding their lives, the kind of place Evelyn dreamed about but never lived to see. When we finished, Liam signed the last paper and said quietly, "This will burn everything down." I nodded. Good. Sometimes you have to light a match to see who runs for cover. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world silent and waiting. I slipped on my gloves, stared at the horizon, and felt the first spark of warmth since that night. Amelia had taken everything from me. Now I was taking it all back. I changed the locks myself. There's something about turning a key that feels like calling time. New deadbolt, new code, old chest of drawers bolted to the wall. Small ceremonial acts that reassert a life someone tried to erase. I put Amelia's spare key in a little envelope and dropped in the mailbox, like returning a chapter she'd ripped out. Then I went to the bank. The teller looked like she recognized me from a charity gala. Polite smile, practiced sympathy. Liam had already wired the freezes. Accounts on hold, credit lines suspended. My name on the trust paperwork that now read Evelyn Sterling Foundation. The woman's screen blinked red. "I'm sorry, sir, but these cards are declined." Her voice carried soft but public. I could see Amelia's face flash in my mind. That fake arch of indignation she wears when someone interrupts her plans. Later that day, she sent a text. "I'm home. Everything's fine." Short, casual, meant to intimidate. I read it under the kitchen light and laughed. The sound 2 parts sorrow, 1 part something harder. I posted a picture on my private account, the only photograph of Evelyn I ever kept, captioned, simply, protected. It spread among friends like summer wildfire. By evening, Amelia stood in front of the grocery checkout, gloss and furious, her card rejected beneath fluorescent lights with customers watching. The cashier's apology was louder than it should have been. She thought she'd humiliated me by leaving me on the highway. She didn't know how loud the truth could be. By New Year's morning, Amelia's mask had started to crack. Liam called to tell me she'd already contacted the bank, trying to clarify a misunderstanding. I could almost hear her voice, polite but sharp, sugar-coated venom. "My father must have made a mistake," she'd say. Classic Amelia move. Weaponized charm before resorting to panic. But this time, the system wasn't hers to manipulate. Every account, every transfer, every wire now pointed to the Evelyn Sterling Foundation. Untouchable. That afternoon, I watched from across the street as she pulled up to my old house in her white BMW. She jabbed her key into the lock. Once, twice, again. Nothing. She banged on the door, shouting my name. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. The same people she used to invite to her charity luncheons, now watching her unravel in real time. Public humiliation number 1. I didn't open the door. Didn't need to. My message was already taped to the glass. Access revoked. Please contact legal counsel. Simple. Precise. Cruel only in its honesty. She stood there, shaking, then stormed off down the driveway, her heels punching little graves into the snow. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the way her taillights disappeared into that blizzard, the cold silence she left behind. As I turned back inside, the house felt different, lighter, cleaner, like it could finally breathe again. I poured myself a glass of bourbon, raised it toward Evelyn's photo on the mantel, and said quietly, "Phase 1, complete." Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft, relentless, and cleansing. By the end of that week, word had spread faster than wildfire on dry brush. Amelia and Noah, the Sterling heirs, as the local paper once called them, were suddenly broke. Their accounts locked, their credit lines severed, their friends whispering behind closed doors. I watched in the corner booth of that same diner, Evelyn's, as they stormed in one morning, desperate for a familiar face. The waitress whispered to another, "That's Mason's girl, the one who froze her daddy out." I didn't need to intervene. Humiliation number 2 was doing its work all on its own. They ordered breakfast they couldn't pay for. When the check came, Noah fumbled through his empty wallet. "Must be a banking error," he mumbled. The waitress just shrugged, chewing gum, unimpressed. They left, leaving behind a cold plate of eggs and the scent of failure. Later that day, Amelia called me from a borrowed phone. "Dad," she began, her voice all honey and panic. "We need to talk. There's been some confusion." I let the silence stretch, long enough for her to hear the hum of my resolve. Then I said, calm as a man reading the weather, "No confusion, sweetheart. Just correction." When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window. Older, yes, but sharper. I wasn't the man she abandoned on that highway anymore. And as snow began to fall outside again, soft and unending, I realized something. Winter wasn't killing me. It was forging me. That night, I drove back to the old penthouse. The crown jewel Amelia once bragged about at every charity event. The doorman, Carlos, gave me that quiet nod men reserve for those who survived something they shouldn't have. "Good to see you back, Mr. Sterling," he said. I smiled. For good this time. Inside, the place felt colder than I remembered. Amelia's expensive perfume still lingered in the air, artificial sweetness layered overwrought. I walked through each room, unplugging the ghosts. Her designer coats, Noah's imported whiskey, all of it boxed and labeled for donation. The marble floors echoed with every step, like the house itself was exhaling. The next morning, I signed the final transfer papers. The Evelyn Sterling Foundation officially owned the penthouse, a symbol of greed reborn as a sanctuary, just like Evelyn would have wanted. When the plaque went up by the door, engraved with her name, I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge, restoration. That evening, Amelia returned, expecting to reclaim her throne. But instead of the key card's familiar beep, she found a golden plaque that read, "Property of the Evelyn Sterling Foundation." She pounded on the door, screaming, drawing the attention of the entire lobby. Cameras caught everything. Her rage, her disbelief, the exact moment she realized she'd been erased. Public humiliation number 3. I stood unseen on the balcony above, hands in my pockets, watching snow drift through city lights. She thought she'd built her empire on my name. Now, she couldn't even get past the front door. The video hit social media the next day. Someone from the lobby had filmed the whole scene. Amelia pounding on the penthouse door, shouting my name, security trying to calm her down. Within hours, it was everywhere. Heiress denied entry to her own home. The internet did what it does best. Turn cruelty into entertainment. Hashtags, memes, think pieces about entitlement. For once, I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth had found its own megaphone. Noah called me that afternoon. His tone was all corporate calm, the voice of a man who'd rehearsed apologies in the mirror. "Mason, listen, this is getting out of hand. We can fix this. Restore your accounts. Get the press off everyone's back." I let him finish, sipping my coffee by the window, watching flakes drift past the glass. "Noah," I said quietly, "you took my trust, my family, and tried to turn me into a ghost. Now you get to live with one." Then I hung up. That night, I opened a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside, Evelyn's old journal, her handwriting looping like music. She'd written, "The world doesn't fall apart, Mason. It reveals who was holding it together." I read that line until the ink blurred. She'd been right all along. For the first time since that frozen highway, I slept through the night. The storm outside had lost its teeth. And deep down, I knew the reckoning wasn't over yet. The final chapter was still waiting to be written. A week passed before Amelia dared to face me in person. She arrived unannounced at Liam's office, wearing a black coat far too thin for January, her pride hanging by the last thread. I was already there, waiting. "Dad," she started, forcing a smile, "this has gone too far." Her voice trembled beneath the practiced confidence. "You're destroying the family name. People are talking." I leaned back in my chair, studying her like I used her when she was 5, and tried to hide a broken vase behind her back. "You mean your reputation," I said. "The family name is fine. It's still written in stone on a plaque you can't touch." She winced. "You think this makes you noble? Giving everything away?" "No," I said quietly. "It makes me free." Liam slid a folder across the table. The final statement from the trust, the legal confirmation that Amelia and Noah were no longer beneficiaries. Her eyes darted over the pages, each line a door slamming shut. "You can't do this," she snapped. "Mom would never." I cut her off. Don't use her name to justify what you did." My voice was steady, but the air between us crackled like ice underfoot. She pushed back on the table. fury trembling through her. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe," I said, standing, "but at least I'll regret it on my terms." As she stormed out, the door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I looked at Liam, and he just nodded slowly. That, he said, was the sound of a dynasty ending, and for the first time, it actually felt like peace. For a few days after that meeting, I stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that makes people nervous. Amelia and Noah began reaching out through mutual friends, spinning their version of the story. The senile old man, manipulated by lawyers, acting out of grief. They underestimated how small this town really is. Rumors don't spread here, they ferment. Then came the invitation. A gala at the downtown museum, a fundraiser Amelia had planned months ago, back when she still had access to my name and my checkbook. She didn't cancel it. Maybe pride, maybe denial. Either way, it was the perfect stage. I showed up unannounced. The room went still. The orchestra faltered mid-note. Amelia froze at the podium, her champagne smile cracking like thin ice. "Dad," she said through clenched teeth, "you weren't on the guest list." I stepped closer, just enough for the microphones to catch it. "Neither are you," I said, pulling from my coat a printed notice. Event sponsorship revoked. Funding redirected to the Evelyn Sterling Foundation. Gasps rolled through the crowd. The museum director hurried forward to thank me. Publicly, cameras flashed. Amelia stood there, color draining, applause swallowing her words. Noah tugged at her arm, whispering, "Let's go." But she couldn't move. Her empire was collapsing, not in silence, but under polite clinking of crystal glasses. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the marble wall. Older, colder, resolute. I hadn't come for revenge tonight. I'd come for closure. And judging by the look on her face, I just found it. After the gala, the world around Amelia began to shrink. Sponsors pulled out. Investors stopped returning calls. And every social circle she once ruled quietly exiled her. Her name, once gold-plated, had become radioactive. She tried to rebuild a narrative online, long posts about forgiveness, family, moving forward. But the comments told another story. People remember the video, the tantrum, the scandal. Internet memory is eternal, especially when you're rich and cruel. I watched it unfold from my porch, coffee steaming in the morning frost. I wasn't gloating, not exactly. It felt more like watching a storm finally run out of rain. Evelyn used to say, "You don't chase storms, Mason. You let them pass." Maybe she was right. Then came Noah's move. Desperation has a scent. Expensive cologne over fear. He came to see me at the diner. No cameras, no entourage. Just him and his crocodile grin. "We can make this right," he said, sliding a paper across the table. "Sign this, and we'll restore the family image. No more press, no more drama." I didn't touch the paper. "You know what your problem is, Noah?" I said, leaning in. "You mistake silence for weakness." He smirked. "And you mistake pride for power." I smiled. "No, I mistake men like you for temporary." He left with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. I sat there, tracing the rim of my coffee cup, feeling Evelyn's words echo somewhere deep inside me. The storm was almost over. But not quite, because some lessons can't be learned until the final hit lands. It was mid-January when the final piece fell into place. Liam called early that morning, his voice calm, satisfied. "It's done," he said. "Audit confirmed. Fraud charges are inbound. They'll be hearing from the state by Monday." I sat in silence for a moment, letting the words sink in. Fraud, embezzlement, all the little adjustments Noah had made to my accounts under Amelia's signature, now neatly wrapped in a legal bow. Karma didn't just knock. It filed paperwork. By noon, the news broke. Local station first, then national. Sterling couple under investigation for financial misconduct. Photos of them leaving their condo in sunglasses and shame. I didn't celebrate. I just turned off the TV and took a walk down to the lake. The ice was thick, the air sharp enough to cut through memory. That's when I saw something. A pair of old gloves frozen near the shore. Mine, maybe. From that night she left me there. I'd picked them up, brittle and stiff, and slip one on. It didn't fit right anymore. I guess that's how it works. Once you survive the cold, you stop belonging to it. When I got back home, I lit a fire and poured 2 glasses of bourbon. One for me, one for Evelyn. Her picture on the mantel glowing in the firelight. It's almost over, love, I whispered. Outside, snow began again, soft, deliberate, endless. Inside, the clock ticked toward midnight. And for the first time in years, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Almost. The hearing started 2 weeks later. Amelia tried to walk into that courthouse like she still owned the world. Chin high, designer coat, cameras flashing. But confidence is easy when you think people are admiring you. It's harder when they're watching you fall. I sat in the back row, quiet, unseen. Liam told me I didn't have to come, but I needed to. Call it closure. Call it proof. The prosecutor's voice was steady as she laid it all out. Falsified documents, unauthorized transfers, the forged signatures. Each word landed like a nail sealing a coffin. Noah tried to charm the judge, his smile rehearsed, his words slippery. Amelia just stared at the floor, tapping her manicured nails against the table, a rhythm of guilt and denial. When they mentioned the Evelyn Sterling Foundation, her head finally lifted. The photos of the women helped by the shelter, the donations, the community programs, were displayed for the courtroom to see. Evelyn's dream was alive, and it had her daughter's name written all over it, not as a benefactor, but as a cautionary tale. When the gavel fell for recess, Amelia turned slightly, her eyes scanning the room until they found me, for a heartbeat. She looked like the little girl who once held my hand at her mother's grave. Then her expression hardened, shame twisting into defiance. I didn't flinch. I just met her gaze and nodded once. Slow and final. She blinked, looked away, and for the first time, I think she realized I wasn't her victim anymore. I was her reckoning. After that day in court, something inside me shifted. Revenge had done its job. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than I expected. I kept thinking of Evelyn, how she would have hated all this noise, all this ugliness between us. She believed in grace even when people didn't deserve it, especially then. So, one evening I drove back to the highway, the same stretch where Amelia had left me freeze. The sky was bruised purple, the kind of winter dusk that feels like it's holding its breath. I parked on the shoulder and stepped out, boots crunching over ice and gravel. For a long moment, I just stood there, 64 years of memory pressing down on my shoulders. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I spoke out loud, to no one and everyone. Evelyn, I kept my promise. She'll never do this to anyone again. But God help me, I don't know if I won. The wind carried my words into trees. And maybe it was the cold, or maybe it was her. But I swear I felt warmth on my face, faint, gentle, like forgiveness itself brushing past. As I turned back to the car, I saw my reflection in the window, older, weathered, but alive. The man who'd once been abandoned was now the one walking away. And for the first time, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. A month later, the verdict came down. Guilty on all counts: fraud, falsification, conspiracy. Noah took the plea deal, of course. Amelia didn't. Pride always was her fatal flaw. She stood there in that courtroom, surrounded by flashing cameras and murmurs, still pretending she could talk her way out of it. But the world had stopped listening. When the sentence was read, she didn't cry. She just looked at me, one last defiant stare, the same one she gave me as a teenager when she broke curfew and lied about it. Except now, the stakes were everything. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around me, microphones thrust like daggers. Mr. Sterling, how does it feel to see your daughter convicted? I paused, looking past them toward the falling snow, soft and indifferent. It doesn't feel like victory, I said. It feels like gravity. Then I walked away. That night, I visited the Evelyn Sterling Foundation for the first time since it opened. The lobby smelled of fresh paint and coffee. Women laughed softly, somewhere down the hall. Life was happening there, messy, hopeful, real. Evelyn would have loved that. On the wall hung a framed quote from her journal. The measure of man isn't what he leaves behind, but what he sets free. I stood there a long time, staring at those words, until the world outside grew quiet again. Tomorrow, Amelia would begin her sentence. But tonight, I was finally serving mine, and it was ending. It's been a year now. The snow's back, same as that night she left me on the road. Funny how winter remembers. I sit by the window of my new place. Smaller, quieter, just me and the hum of the city. I don't own much anymore. No penthouse, no accounts with too many zeros. Just peace. And that's worth more than anything I ever signed my name to. Sometimes I drive past the old highway, the one where it all began. The snow piles thick along the guardrails, the sky the same dull silver. I pull over, roll down the window, and let the cold hit my face. It doesn't hurt like it used to. Amelia writes occasionally, letters from the correctional program, short, clumsy, human. The last one began with, "Dad, I understand now." I don't know if she truly does, but I write back anyway. I tell her Evelyn's foundation is thriving, that people are healing, that maybe she can too. On the dash of my car, I keep Evelyn's photo, the same one I showed Amelia that day in Liam's office. Her smile still has that calm certainty, as if she knew how this story would end. I whisper to her, like I did that night in the storm, "It's done, love. It's finally done." Outside, the snow keeps falling, erasing old tracks, covering everything in silence and light. And somewhere in that quiet, I feel her answer, not in words, but in peace. The kind that only comes when justice is done, and mercy finally finds its way home. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.